Hey, what's up guys? Radku here, back with another Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile. And today is going to be Fluffle slash Edgimp slash Frightfur. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna make the title Fluffle deck, because that's the majority of the deck. But this deck is super cool, has some great lockdowns, has multiple negation type cards, and can go into some crazy boards, including stuff like True King of All Calamities, Appaloosa, and have totally awesome on the field. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting things off, most of these Fluffal monsters are mandatory. You don't necessarily need to run this exact ratio, but I ran it based off of the fact that these are some of the best Fluffal monsters. 3 copies of Fluffal Dog. This can search your Edgimp or Fluffal monsters, but it can also just double as a free monster to go into link plays, which can, pretty well handle some of your extra deck plays. 3 copies of Fluffal Penguin. Adorable. But this card is super powerful. It's another special summon, as well as if it's used for a fusion material, you get to draw 2 cards and then discard 1. But that is a super good effect. You could just use that at the end of your plays and then go into even more plays because of how busted it is. Plus, it's a water, so you can use it for Bahamut Shark. 3 copies of Fluffle Wings, just because this is generically just a decent Fluffle monster. It doesn't have a ton of good effects, but I use it because this deck is based around Toy Vendor, and being able to use that. So just a free draw 1 after using it for fusion plays can really help your deck. 3 copies of Fluffle Sheep. If you control a Fluffle monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can return 1 other Fluffle card to the hand to special summon 1 Edgimp monster from your hand or graveyard. So this is really good because if you have like a Fluffle Penguin and a Fluffle Sheep, you can use that to go and get some of your Scythe or your Chain or your sabers to really help just continue your plays. And all in all, it's a decent recovery card as well as just being good for link plays. 2 copies of Dolphin. I was gonna play 3 copies of Dolphin, but I decided against it. This helps renew your Toy Vendor. Plus, it's another water monster for Bahamut Shark. Tell me in the comments if it's Bahamut or Bahamut, because I think it's Bahamut, but most people say Bahamut. I'm not sure. So this is definitely really good. You can target 1 Toy Vendor in the grave. If you do, send 1 Fluffle or Edgimp monster from your deck to the graveyard. And then if this card is sent to the graveyard as fusion material, you can shuffle into the deck 1 of your fusion spells that is banished or in the graveyard. So this can again help renew your fusion spells, as well as the fact that you have 1 copy of Frightfur Fusion in the deck, which means that it's a searchable fusion, which means it's good to have it in the grave. Then I play 2 copies of Bear, just because this card's decent. It can help search your Toy Vendor, and it can also help search your Poly, which is pretty good, but I feel like Owl does it better. I would play 2 copies of Owl and 1 copy of Bear, but I just felt like I wanted to play more copies of Bear, just cause. Plus some decent graveyard plays with Frightfur Fusion, but either way, both of them search Poly. This one just has a better search effect, so if you're gonna play this deck, I'd suggest trying 2 Owl and 1 Bear, but this card does help recover Toy Vendor, which is the main reason why I played 2 copies of it. But if you're gonna make this not really about Toy Vendor, but more about the fusion side of the deck, then I'd play 3 copies of this and just go 1 copy of this and cut out something else. 2 copies Edge Imp Sabers, just because it's a generic Edge Imp card. Plus, most of your cards can search Edge Imps, so you can cut this down to 1, but I prefer to have 2 of them just so that I can almost always consistently have an Edge Imp monster in my hand. 3 copies of Edge Imp Scythe, probably one of your best cards. During your opponent's main phase quick effect, you can reveal this card in your hand to fusion summon 1 Fright for Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters you control, or in your hand as fusion material, including this card in your hand. Then if a frightful monster you control would be destroyed by battle, you can banish this card from the graveyard instead. So on top of having decent protection for your monsters, you also have a free special summon on your opponent's turn. Well, not necessarily free, but a really good special summon on your opponent's turn. On top of, again, just that free protection, plus it's all searchable. 3 copies of Edge Imp Chain. Sabers isn't as good as the rest of them, but Edge Imp Chain is probably your second best next to Scythe. Chain's effect is when this card declares an attack, you can add 1 Edge Imp monster or Edge Imp Chain from your deck to your hand, which can help continue your plays. Then if this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you can add 1 Fright for card from your deck to your hand, which is really good because you use this for fusion plays. Then you can search a Fright for fusion to go into another like Cruel Whale to go into a True King of All Calamities, which is perfect. Then for the hand traps, 2 copies of Ash, just because I didn't want to play 3 copies and gunk up the deck, but I did want to have options. 2 copies of Imperm, because Imperm is still great. 3 copies of Toy Vendor. Once per turn, you can discard 1 card, draw 1 card, and show it. And then if it's a Fluffal monster, you can special summon 1 monster from your hand. Otherwise, discard the card you drew. Then if this card is sent to the graveyard, add 1 Fluffal or Edge Imp card from your deck to your hand. So this is really, really good. Oh, monster, sorry. This is really, really good. And the thing is that a lot of your cards could have effects like Tiger, or other cards can have effects to pop a Toy Vendor so that you can gain more advantage. Then you have cards like Fluffle Bear, which can renew your Toy Vendor, which gets you more advantage because it's not a once per turn on the graveyard effect. So you can spam this pretty well. Plus it's a soft once per turn on its initial draw effect, which is pretty good. Plus some of your cards have graveyard plays, so also really, really good. Like I said, this deck is based around Toy Vendor. If you're not going to do that, just cut out maybe 1 copy of Bear and make 2 copies of Owl. Then I played 3 copies of Fright for Patchwork. Add 1 Edge Imp monster and 1 Polymerization from your deck to your hand. For some reason, while I was playtesting this deck, I never drew into this card. It's kind of like my Machina deck, where I never draw into Machina Redeployment. I believe it's Redeployment. No, it's not Redeployment. It's that good card for Machinas that can search out 2 cards. I never draw into it for some reason, even though it's one of the best cards in the deck. But I don't usually draw into this card, even though I have 3 copies of it. But if you want to draw into this card, you will. It's an amazing card. It can search an Edge Imp and a Poly, which some of your Edge Imps can they won't usually search your Fluffle cards, but you'll almost always have a Fluffle in your hand, considering how many we play. If you don't end up with a Fluffle in your hand, it's just going to be really annoying. Plus, Toy Vendor can search that. 2 copies of Poly, because this is a fusion deck. Plus, we don't have any other decent fusion spells other than Frightfur, which is a good one of in the deck, but nothing more. I would play 3 Poly, but I kind of wanted to make room for the next spot. 2 copies of Twin Twister. So, like I said, some of your cards have graveyard effects, which is really good. Plus, Twin Twister can pop your Toy Vendor, which allows you to search cards, which is really good. So you can gain advantage even if you're not going second. So then rounding off the main deck, I play 1 copy of Fright for Fusion because this is like single-handedly one of the best cards in the deck. But it's only good as a one-of. It's searchable with Edgem Chains after it uses fusion material, and then just continuing from there, you can basically you draw into Edgem Chains and a Fluffal Owl, and you instantly have a true King of all Calamities, which is really, really good. So you could summon Owl, search Polly, then you can use Polly to fuse Chains and Owl into a Cruel Whale, then use Fright for Fusion that you searched off of Chains to go into another one, which you can just end the board right there with a True King of all Calamities and call it a day. Yeah. Continuing into the extra deck, 3 copies of Cruel Whale, one of the newer support cards for Fluffle. It is really, really good. So, if this card is fusion summoned, you can destroy 1 card on both players' field. Then once per turn, quick effect, you can target 1 fusion monster you control, send 1 Fright for card from your deck to the graveyard, or extra deck to the graveyard, except Cruel Whale, and if you do that targeted monster gains attack equal to half of it. So, a ton of your monsters don't have super high attacks, because Fluffles aren't really known for that. They do have great spot removal, but their attack isn't super killer, but you can still use that pretty effectively to give your monster some decently high attack points. Plus, you'll almost always have a certain Fluffle monster in your extra deck, like Wolf, that you can use, which, I mean, you won't go into all your cards in your extra deck, so you'll almost always have another card to use for that effect. Plus, again, level 9 for True King of all Calamities. Then I play 2 copies of Kraken. Kraken's really good. It's just generic. Then you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard, non-destruction removal. Really good. This card cannot attack directly the turn this effect is activated. Then this card can make a second attack during each battle phase. So then once per turn at the end of the battle phase, if this card battled, you can change this card to defense position. So it has a high defense count, which is pretty good, but I mean, it's just for protection and lightning storm protection. On top of that, you have a great double attack effect, which can swing at your opponent for a 4,400 attack, which is really good. Plus, on top of that, it's just decent for setting there. You could play cards like Hope Harbinger or generic level 8 Xyz to go into 2 of those with a similar play that I said instead of True King of all Calamities, but I prefer the Calamities play. Then I played 2 copies of Tiger. Tiger's pretty decent because it destroys cards based off of how many materials you used, which, like I said, you play a ton of Fluffle monsters, so you're almost always going to have more than 1 Fluffle monster to use, which, I mean, even if you don't, it's fine, because you get 1 or 2 spot removal and just some general destruction. On top of this card gives attack, so decent. 1 copy of Wolf must be fusion summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card can attack a number of times up to the number of fusion materials, so you can use 1 or more Fluffle monsters, which is the same as Tiger, but Wolf is definitely better, because even though Tiger has some destruction, Wolf has like infinite attacks, which you could use Cruel Whale to send like a Kraken to the grave, and then Wolf would gain more attack and be able to attack a billion times. 1 copy of Appaloosa, just because generic negation, plus it's pretty easy to go into it with this deck. 1 copy Cross Sheep, because of fusion cards, you can special summon 1 from your graveyard, which is really good. 1 copy of Verte Anaconda, if you're like stuck and you don't have any fusion plays, you can summon like a penguin, then summon a dog from your hand. Then you can use them to go into Verte, and then use a Fright for Fusion to go into a Cruel Will. Or you could go into a Kraken if you want, it doesn't really matter. Then I play one copy of Bahamut Shark, or Bahamut Shark. This is just to go into your Toad. Plus, it's pretty easy to summon with this deck. Once per turn, you can detach one Xyz material from this card. Special summon one rank 3 or lower Xyz monster. This card cannot attack, which is fine. One copy of Toad, of course. Just some great cards, plus some negation is pretty good. One copy of the Abyss Dweller, because graveyard effects are still pretty prevalent, so having Abyss Dweller is just generically good. Then finally, one copy of True King of All Calamities. I would play 2 copies, but I felt like it wasn't needed because you can't go into 2 copies unless you revive a Cruel Whale. But I thought it was really good in this deck. Plus, it's just generically good in general, and you can go into it pretty easily with this deck. So that is it for the video. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, let me know what you thought, and let me know if there's anything you'd change about this deck. I definitely feel like the poly searchers could be changed up a bit. I'm wanting to run more than one copy of Owl, and this deck doesn't necessarily need to revolve around Toy Vendor, but it can. So yeah, that's pretty much it, and I will see you in the next Yu-Gi-Oh video. Peace, guys.